What's going on with gas prices here in California? The sticker shock is killing residents in this state as the wallets keep taking a hit. Something is strange here, especially when the national average in the U.S. is about $3 a gallon, with some states as low as $2.60. Why here in California is the average gallon of gas about $4.70, and that's on the low end. Some gas stations in this state are shockingly as high as $7 a gallon. That's insane, and we're going to have some answers for you during this broadcast as we interview the leading oil and energy expert in California today. First though, before we talk to our expert, here's just a sample of what many Californians are complaining about these days. Take a listen.
As somebody who works 3 different jobs just to make ends meet, and then having to pay, almost $100 to fill up her gas tank, it's demoralizing. It's awful.
They're just super expensive. I mean, almost unaffordable. You got to fill up every few days.
I have to start budgeting myself just for gas, and that's to get to work to make more money. So it just all in all makes everything a lot more difficult for me and my entire family, honestly.
I think I spend about $800 a month in gas, so it's really taking a toll on, I think, not only me, but a bunch of people that are self-employed, that have to travel for a living.
There's nothing I can do. It's all about our government and who's running our state. And if they're mismanaging, and we pay for it. It happens all the time.
Joining me now to discuss all of this is USC Professor Michael Mische. Professor Mische is a widely published and highly respected scholar who's written more than 150 papers. Many focus on California's oil and gas sector.
We've had, some pretty tough economic policies imposed on the California consumer here.
Is this bad policy, justifiable policy?
It really depends on one's perspective, right? For me, it's horrible policy because government should be working for the people.
USC Professor Michael Mische says during the Newsom administration, gas prices have increased nearly 35% all throughout California, ever since the day the governor took office, and the number of drilling permits has declined some 97%. Professor Mische says his own 2025 published reports researching gas prices and the oil industry are an example of California's mismanagement as this relates to the energy sector. Mismanagement that Mische says has forced oil companies to flee California and gas prices to spiral out of control.
The first study was on price gouging, and as you know, the governor has demonized the industry and said they're price gouging the consumer. We did a 50-year study going back to literally 1971, and we could find no economic evidence of price gouging by the refiners or by the oil producers. We're losing one refinery, Phillips 66 in Wilmington, and we're losing a second refinery, Valero, up in Venecia, and we've also lost some production. We're down 20%. Prices are going to go up, and you need to pay attention to this. And so it didn't fit his narrative, and so he attacked me personally and really tried to get me fired.
And Professor, for the record, we should tell our viewers, you are neither Democrat nor Republican, liberal nor conservative in your reporting. It's just the facts. It's very centrist. It's very common sense. You're not trying to do gotcha reporting. It's simply trying to say, hey, here's the data. Californians are suffering. This is the research, if I'm not mistaken.
That's exactly right. I mean, the research, all the data is publicly available. It's California data. It came from the California Energy Commission, California Air Resources Board, California Franchise Tax Board, and Fee Administration. So this is all publicly available data. There's nothing fancy about it. There's nothing sinister about it. Everybody uses it. We took data from the EIA. The math is the math. Right. It's that simple. And as I tell folks, 2 and 2 equal 4 in our world.
Right.
Now, you may not like that answer, but that is the answer. And so in this case, we have supply dropping by 20%. Demand is not coming down the way they thought it was going to come down. And so the prices are naturally going to drift upwards.
We're here now in West LA. This marquee of the prices anywhere from $5 to over $6 a gallon. I saw prices $6.30 a gallon, $7 a gallon.
What the people need to understand is of that $5.19, $1.44 is in California taxes and regulatory fees.
So how much is the owner of this gas station then earning?
At today's prevailing price, somewhere between 8 and 12 cents a gallon. while the state makes 60 cents a gallon on the same gallon of gas sold. So in California, we had 40 plus refineries. Today we have 8. In April, we'll have 7. In addition, we have this huge pipeline system that goes north-south. Now, there's not enough oil in that pipeline system to make it economically viable or even operationally viable. That's part of the reason for SB 237 in these oil wells. But if we lose that pipeline, and there's a high probability that we will, along with another refinery, then prices are just going to skyrocket.
California Senate Bill 237 that Professor Mische speaks of is a 2025 law that streamlines oil and gas drilling in Kern County, California. Kern County is the largest oil-producing county located in the Central Valley. It's also a large oil-producing region for the U.S. with its massive Midway Sunset oil field. SB 237 is intended to boost local production in Kern County and eventually help stabilize gas prices all throughout the state. The new legislation is an effort to make the permitting process for new wells easier and more efficient. Simply put, 237 exempts new drilling projects in Kern County from certain CEQA requirements for 10 years. CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act, so this kind of loosens some restrictions, now allowing some 2,000 new well permits. And 237 also gives Governor Newsom the authority to suspend costly summer blend gasoline requirements during price emergencies. The bill also requires exploring the possibility of a regional fuel blend to try and help stabilize the out-of-control market, which has resulted in some of the insane California gas prices. And yet, despite the governor's efforts, Professor Mische says SB 237 was passed partly for Governor Newsom's political expediency. According to Professor Mische's recent SB 237 published study that he shared with Congress, Mische writes in part, "The governor is wrong." The California legislature views SB 237 as the primary solution to the refinery and gasoline crisis. However, the math says otherwise. Mische goes on to write, SB 237 is not going to provide enough oil to meet demand nor keep the Crimson Pipeline operable. The Crimson Pipeline is a mega north-south California artery that's about to collapse and probably shut down no later than March 31st, 2026. The professor further writes in his study, restoration of the pipeline is possible. However, this requires additional expenditure, more money. Consequently, Mische says California supply chains could now be vulnerable to geopolitical and natural disasters, with California more dependent on non-U.S. foreign sources of both crude and gasoline, and now more reliant on foreign tankers for product shipment. Finally, Professor Mische writes, in all instances, California is going to further contribute to increasing global greenhouse gas emissions and a massive increase with consumer retail gasoline prices. Professor Mische says SB 237 is too little, too late.
So the first refinery to come out publicly to leave was Phillips 66 here in Wilmington. And they're at about 135 to 139,000 barrels of oil a day refinery capacity. And they flat out said, the state is too complex to work within and our costs are going up. Not too long after that, in April, late March, early April, Valero in Northern California flat out said, we're out of the state. And they were very upfront about it. They said, we're tired of operating this hostile environment. We're tired of operating under these punitive rules. And by the way, our operating costs across California refineries are on average 35 to 38% higher than anywhere else in the country. So they exited for regulatory reasons and economic reasons. Now, interesting, if I could add this, Gavin Newsom led an effort to try to entice them to stay in the state with anywhere from $80 to $200 million compensation package. They turned that down just a few weeks ago. They reconfirmed last week they're exiting no later than April 30th, 2026.
However, the governor is saying he's oil friendly.
Well, yeah, he's oil friendly now because he realizes the mistakes that have been made by his administration and himself personally, right?
For the record, I contacted the office of Governor Gavin Newsom for this special report for an on-camera or Zoom interview so we could hear from the governor loudly and clearly, hear all he has to say about California gas prices and his oil policy. His office replied saying, We're not tracking any availability on the governor's calendar for an interview. Also, for the record, Governor Newsom has an invitation to be a guest on this program whenever convenient for his busy schedule. We hope to hear from him eventually.
Has Gavin Newsom tried to speak with you about your data, your concerns about fuel affordability here in the state, how these prices are killing the wallets of motorists? Have you heard from the governor's office?
I have not. This price is 50% higher than the national average today. And so what I heard from the governor was a lot of vitriol and an attempt to discredit me and my work. Nonetheless, I reached out to him on several occasions and I said, I'll be happy to come to Sacramento. I'll be happy to sit down with you. I'll be happy to go over this. You may not agree with me at the end of that, but at least you'll know the thought process and the methodology and the effort that went into it. Not a word. Instead, it was vitriol and attempt to disparage my reputation.
With that said, I hear everything you're saying. To be fair, and even though Governor Newsom's office declines an on-camera interview for these series of oil reports we've been producing, he is not here, so I'm going to defend their office a bit. Could there be the possibility, Professor Mische, that it is your data that's possibly flawed? Possibly you've made some mistakes with your research, and possibly you're not being fair to Governor Newsom and his efforts to, at the very least, try to keep California environmentally friendly?
Great question. The data is public data. I mean, we got the data directly from the state of California. The problem we have here is that it doesn't support the governor's narrative. I suspect that if the report did support the governor's narrative, I would probably be sainted in Sacramento instead of demonized in Sacramento.
And all of a sudden, like, my bank account keeps getting drained from spending so much on this gas. I feel for the American people that have to commute, over an hour a day, having to spend that money that they're not getting reimbursed from their employers.
Obviously, it's the most expensive in the world for a reason. I don't know why that reason is, but it's pretty ridiculous. I was probably driving the same amount in Florida, and that was probably half of the price of what I pay on a monthly basis here.
What are you doing to the people? The economy relies on working Americans to keep everything going properly and smoothly, and this is not making anything easier for anyone else.
In Texas, folks are telling me they're paying $3 a gallon, $2.70 a gallon. I'm not sure I'm getting it if there's a disconnect.
Well, there shouldn't be a disconnect because every state has multiple grades of octane. The price we see up there are for octane grades. And so you can get octanes in various states. The problem that we have is $1.44 of this price is California taxes and regulatory fees. They're baked into the consumer price.
Which is half the price of a national average for the gallon.
It is. Why are we paying 60 cents a gallon in a state excise tax? It's the highest in the country.
Professor Mische, to be clear, are you saying that Governor Gavin Newsom is directly to blame, his oil policies are directly to blame for these prices here?
They are a major factor for these prices because look what just happened. We doubled down in cap and trade. So cap and trade is now in effect to 2045. He's dubbed it cap and investment.
The California Cap and Trade program Mische references is a key component to Governor Newsom's climate change strategy. Very simply put, cap and trade sets a limit or cap on the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions, the toxic particles, the diesel emissions, that can be emitted into the air from sources like manufacturing or energy sectors. For example, the massive ports, oil refineries, power plants, large industrial facilities, public transit structures, all of which house large-scale transport and heavy-duty equipment. Cap and Trade is a program that has the ambitious goal of moderating those greenhouse gas emissions. However, Professor Mische says, based on the research and investigation of the California Legislative Analyst's Office, or LAO as it's referred to, there is, quote, no scientific evidence that cap and trade has reduced greenhouse gas emissions or improved air quality. In fact, Mische says LAO has suggested that cap and trade is basically just another tax. So if that's the case, where does the state earn money from the California Cap and Trade program go? Well, that's where there's some controversy, to say the least, or at least according to all the California and Newsom critics. The revenue is often used to fund projects dealing with climate change, projects intended to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions, such as investments in clean energy or zero-emission electric vehicle infrastructure, things like that. And as critic, Professor Mische says cap-and-trade revenue is also slated for California's high-speed rail, which he claims is a joke.
But if you look closely at cap-and-trade, it adds a considerable amount of cost to the price of gasoline. And so we've contributed to that. Now, interesting, 25% of the cap-and-trade goes to the California high-speed rail project, which is the train to nowhere, which we all know is not a high-speed rail project anymore, and it's not going from downtown LA to downtown San Francisco. So it's a very important aspect for us to understand why this money is being collected and how it's being spent. This is just transparency needs to be in place for this. Well, again, the narrative that he has about climate change and big oil and some of the initiatives, and particularly the costs that are baked into the price of gasoline, that narrative does not square out with the research that we've produced and the analysis that we've published. It just doesn't square out. And so I believe perhaps our work represents a threat to his political position and his political future.